You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Welcome to Supply, Trust, and the Business of Pharmacy, the podcast where we dive into the forces shaping pharmacy today, from the supply chain to strategy and everything in between. Hosted by Andrew Crawford, a 25-year pharmacy industry professional and Vice President of Sales and Marketing at KeySource. For the past 19 years, he has worked directly with pharmacies and manufacturers, navigating disruption, driving growth, and building partnerships rooted in trust. This series is about real conversations with industry insiders, pharmacy owners, and leaders who understand what's at stake and where we go from here.
Service, value, and trust is the cornerstone and the basis for this company that we're featuring today in this three-part series, KeySource. If you haven't heard of KeySource, please go to keysource.com. That's K-E-Y source.com. I knew and ran in and contacted, I don't know if I met him at a conference, but we've been connected through LinkedIn since September of 2017. I'd like to welcome to this podcast series, Andrew Crawford, Vice President of Sales and Marketing with KeySource. It's great to have you here, Andy.
Hey, Todd. Great to have the opportunity here, and thanks for having me on. Excited about it.
Me too. Authenticity is so important to me. I gravitate towards people that are in our markets that truly live and breathe pharmacy care, and how we're a bunch of dominoes that run into each other. And if you're positioning yourself in the right way, you're going to make a whole bunch of things happen that aren't necessarily directly tied to you, but tied to the impact that you have. And that's been your attitude for years. So let's talk about you first, just so the listeners understand, who is Andrew Crawford? Why are you in the business of pharmacy?
Sure. No, I've been in the industry 25 years. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but started out as a pharmacy tech in a local health system here in Cincinnati. My oldest sibling is a nurse practitioner, and she said, "Hey, maybe you should think about being a pharmacist." And I said, I don't know that I'm that smart, but let me try out this pharmacy thing. So, fast forward after graduating college, I quickly joined the KeySource team. That was 19 years ago, if you can believe that. So not many people, I think, can say that they're at the same employer since college graduation, but I am one of the lucky few. So I think it has to do a lot with the company culture that we've built here and the opportunity KeySource has given me over all these years. So right now, as the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, I manage both our two most prominent sales teams. That involves our retail sales group and our corporate sales group. The retail sales group manages and supports a lot of our independent retail pharmacy all across the United States, all 50 states. And then our corporate sales group that supports a lot of our regional, national chain business, as well as our institutional customers that can be, long-term care pharmacies, health systems, and specialty pharmacies.
So it's really changed. I entered pharmacy 2004, and it's a different market. It's a different industry. Things are changing. The impact of policy development and regulation, but that secondary connection to a supplier, to a wholesaler, to access to advantage products. That's so much more important today than it was, where you could make a couple purchasing mistakes, or maybe the data that you had didn't align of what the patient consumption within your pharmacy was doing. And I'm thinking of the mixed. We had these firewalls, these silos of community and long-term care and specialty and compounding, and now those silos are disintegrating, and we're seeing that a lot of pharmacy operators are starting to combine those types of services. And when you have access to products and you have education about those products and accessibility of those products, that's critical. I mean, that's more critical to the penny into the purchase order than it's ever been before. Give us an overview of KeySource and how your mission has stayed the same, but how you've implemented technology to keep up with the times and what our pharmacy operators need.
Sure. No, I think you hit on a great point. I think pharmacy has vastly changed. It's constantly evolving. Most in this industry, have seen the rapid consolidation in the national chain space, obviously with, divestiture, most recently of Rite Aid and further contraction of CVS and Walgreens footprint. But pharmacies have to mitigate risk. And one of the reasons they have to do that is just obviously the overhead pressure from reimbursement. One of the key factors I think that pharmacy owners rely on right now is how effective their procurement teams are. They have to manage overhead. And right now, with fewer levers to pull, the one that they can control the most is really to buy right and to manage cash flow in their inventory by buying from suppliers that can help support them. So right now, I'd say, what does KeySource look like today? We've got nearly 4,500 products, where when I began, we had less than 50 19 years ago. So constant evolution and expansion of our formulary. And anything that's genericized, we either have access to in our distribution center here in Cincinnati or can order it from our manufacturer partners, which are a huge, huge part of our success, is aligning with the right manufacturer partners in order to really offer them, the ability to a clean path for market share for their products and services that they're offering. And technology has rapidly evolved, obviously, in our space. We see a vast majority of our pharmacy partners order, obviously, through the great relationships that our account managers provide them, but also through our web platform, KeySource.com, and various EDI connections that we have with our pharmacy partners to help, offer automated inventory options to them. So, one of the things I think we'll continue to see is how can pharmacies leverage and align with a supplier partner like KeySource to really improve their bottom line when they can't control other aspects of their business right now.
That's a good point. And being able to have a partner that flags opportunities that are coming while they're busy taking care of their patients and busy doing something to market their business, having an organization say, "Hey, here's an opportunity. Here's a product that we have, that there's a special going on." There's a lot of constant communication that's necessary. Talk about that communication between KeySource and your customers.
Yeah, you hit on something that's vastly important. It is, proactive approach in bringing value to a customer. I think a lot of people think that the pharmacy and the supplier partner relationship it's a commodity. I need it. I'll order it when I need it. But that doesn't really fly in today's marketplace. You've got to have supplier partners that are proactively bringing, opportunistic purchasing to these pharmacy partners that allow them to maybe order, a bulk purchase that gives them a 20 or 30% savings. And that really helps drive value in their bottom line, in a less reactive approach as it's out of stock. I need the product. I have a patient coming in tomorrow. So I think that's where you're seeing the marketplace continue to shift to. Obviously that depends on class of trade. So not every, independent that's processing 100 or 150 scripts a day is going to be able to do, maybe a similar bulk purchase as a large regional chain. But I think, it's a similar mindset as, how do we provide savings and how do we bring savings to these pharmacy partners over the long term? And I think that's really through a proactive approach.
So class of trade, and I start to go back to what we were saying about the silos that are the difference between community retail pharmacy and our long-term care, assisted living, or specialty compounding, whatever it is. KeySource plays in all of those. That's very unique.
Mhm.
And you're also supporting those individual pharmacies differently than others. However, any of the combo shops that want access to a multitude of different strategies that you put into place, that's also available. So break that down for us with regards to who you're serving, who your clients are.
Sure. No, that's a really great point. And I always say KeySource is, we're big enough to provide value, but we're not, too big to not care about your business. And I think that's the sweet spot that we're in, being really fully autonomous. We're not beholden to a certain, GPO that restricts us or doesn't allow us to manage the business the way we need to manage. And that gives obviously the pharmacies and the manufacturer partners a lot of autonomy. But when you look at the different classes of trade, I think the biggest misconception about a secondary wholesaler is, hey, a secondary wholesaler is just supplying, commoditized maintenance products to independent pharmacies. I think that's really far from what, the value we bring. Obviously, we have a full spectrum of, products within our formulary that hit, a vast majority of the classes of trade out there. But, an independent pharmacy that might have a long-term care pharmacy as part of their business would be able to capitalize on some of the products in our formulary that a lot of long-term care pharmacies do. Maybe they have blister packing needs. What is most valuable to an institutional pharmacy in their business? And a lot of it is consistency of NDCs when they're running automation. They want consistency in value. They don't want disruption, for their patients. So I think that's, a big benefit that we bring to the institutional space, alongside specialty. A lot of people think, well, KeySource is a generic wholesale partner. The vast majority of specialty medications that we dispense are expensive brands. Well, that might be true, but there's significant value in the genericized oral oncolytics that we have, right? The MS products that we have, solid organ transplant. So, although the dispensed dollars might not be as big as some of those brand RX out there in that specialty space, there's still significant value and partnership that KeySource brings our specialty pharmacy partners. So, and then you look at our, regional chain support. And one of the things I think we do really well there is we have the ability to virtually segregate inventory for our largest customers. So we're able to give the service that the small independent needs on a daily basis, and we have the agility to do so. But we also have the ability to service, thousands of pharmacies within a regional chain that both self-distribute and then need service direct to store delivery. So I think that's a really, great benefit that we offer a lot of our pharmacy customers.
The relationship that you're building in triangle between the wholesaler, the pharmacy, the manufacturer, the communications of understanding the access that you're bringing to that pharmaceutical manufacturer, the generic suppliers, those relationships are so key to the fluidity of access to product, and also getting flags from these bigger entities back to KeySource saying, hey, listen, there may be a limited ability to access this NDC in the next 3 months because of shortages, whatever, and then getting that information out as quickly as possible to the client base. Talk to us about the usage of data and how that's changed over the years since you and I have entered the space, and why that's so important.
Yeah, I think, data within a commodities-driven business is essential when you're looking at supply disruption. And let's be honest, right now the fragility of the supply chain is a major concern for a lot of pharmacy partners of ours and the manufacturer partners, because the constant pressures that continue to affect the economics of pharmacy, not only at the patient dispense level, but at the manufacturer level. And manufacturers can't stay in business for free. They have to be able to subsidize their business. They have to be able to be profitable in order to run their business. And I think data is really important in the sense that if you have maybe a generic product that there are 5 players in, and you're going to lose 1 or 2, how does that trickle down effect impact the marketplace? How does it impact pricing? How does it impact accessibility for these pharmacies? And proactively approaching a pharmacy and saying, hey, look, I understand that right now we have NDC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as primary support for you. I'm letting you know proactively that there could be supply disruption on this product, and giving options, right? Do you want to be able to do an opt-in buy where you're going to help hedge your inventory if there's a shortage, and or pivot to an alternate source? I always tell people KeySource can't be the end all be all for you, although we'd like to, right? I think part of a partnership is really looking in the best interest of your pharmacy customers. And sometimes it might be, hey, I just want to let you know that maybe we're not the best fit for you, on this supply of this product. And I want you to go out and proactively approach others. And I think a big piece of that strategy falls into the larger customer base, maybe the regional and national pharmacy chains that have both direct manufacturer relationships and distributor relationships. And, that doesn't fall on deaf ears. Those pharmacy partners that look at KeySource and say, they're helping define my business. They're helping me with sharing data that could be beneficial to me in the event of a supply gap and or maybe a cost increase, because all of those things are a constant in today's marketplace right now.
And it's honesty. It's saying to the market, hey, KeySource wants your business, but we know that if you don't stay in business and if you don't thrive, then KeySource is going to disintegrate and fall apart because we're not going to have any clients. So if you're looking out for what's in the best interest of the client first, and then in essence, that's looking out for what's in the best interest of the patient. And if that's the case, then you're going to be successful. There's still struggles. I know that just from our tiny little publication in podcasting. But we've always led with bringing authenticity and bringing the best information that we have, or the best experts that we have. I want to shift a gear. This is something that I didn't preface with you, Andy. So it's maybe a curveball, but it's a rise trend. And that is the untraditional business models in pharmacy, because I feel like we've poured the water of the economy down the hill of how hard it is to be in business in the world of pharmacy today. And that water rushes to the crevices of opportunity, and it finds the gullies, and it starts to permeate, and it starts to make new tracks. And one of those new tracks is pharmacies that are no longer governed or at the call of the PBM, and how the cash-based pharmacies, we have several here in Pittsburgh, in the Pittsburgh area, that are like, hey, zero insurance, it's cash, that's it. KeySource and other secondary wholesalers are, not to say a pun of key, but it's key. It's key to their survival. Talk to me about some of that creativity and how business models, since I hate to say this, but welcome to being a veteran, but you're one of the veterans. I'm one of the veterans of our industry now. We've seen things change. This was never a thought 20 years ago, but talk to us about shifting business models and how KeySource is supporting those.
Yeah, I think, you bring up the elephant in the room when it comes to, how PBMs govern, formulary decisions. And I think that, the cash pay model is interesting because it gives consumers options, and that's what is necessary. That's what makes this country great, is options and freedom of choice. And I think that, you're always going to have your Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, patients out there, and then you're going to have these cash pay models that give options, maybe for an oncolytic, that they can have cash pay price that's cheaper than what it is when they adjudicate through their carrier, their insurance carrier. And I'd say how I've seen that change the industry is those particular customers or those particular consumers, it gives them, it gives them options, but it also gives suppliers options to be able to partner with a different type of pharmacy model. And it's driven a lot less by contracts. So I think that's why KeySource is, a viable partner for cash pay pharmacies is, we don't offer any contracts. It's very different than a PVA arrangement through one of the primary wholesalers. And cash pay pharmacies, the one thing I know within, my tenure and doing business with them is what they need most is they need autonomy. They need the autonomy to purchase. They need autonomy to not be beholden to certain restrictions of brand and non-brand and GCR. And they need consistent value within the pricing they get from their supplier partners. And they need, consistent NDCs because the larger cash pay pharmacies run a lot of automation. And if it's a mail order, a mail order situation where they're running automation, well, consistency in that NDC at a good value is of the utmost importance to them. So I think that's back to your original question of how, the industry's evolved to give more options to consumers, and the cash pay as one of those options. I don't think it's really a new ideology because I think cash pay pharmacy has been around for many, many years. It's just not as, popular as maybe once it is now, once it was not in the past, vis-a-vis, the Mark Cubans out there in the world and many others. But it just gives patients options. And I think whenever a patient has an option to access a medication that's vital to their health care, then this country's a better place for it.
Yeah. What do you want to tell pharmacy owners listening right now, pharmacy operators listening, the hospital system pharmacist that's listening to the episode as a differentiator of KeySource in comparison to other organizations that you probably work with too? Because I think it's there's multiple partnerships happening behind the scene. But what do you want to say about KeySource specifically to those listeners?
I'd say for the institutional customers, the hospital pharmacies, the health systems, I come from a health system background, so I understand the sometimes bureaucracy behind it. And most in that space is how do we continue on when, some of our number one profit generators, elective surgeries are one of them, are not bringing revenue in for that, said health system. So I think what that did was that reshaped procurement probably across that entire organization, and pharmacy procurement being a large portion of spend, both inpatient and outpatient. So I think that kind of realigned many in that space to look outside of what the traditional PVA relationship was. And KeySource has always done really well in that space because we have the technology with EDI. We have the vast formulary of both, oral solids, injectables, derms, creams, ointments, otics, the whole gamut. And I think that, what an inpatient, outpatient pharmacy needs is somebody that doesn't behold the institution to a brand generic ratio that's unfavorable to them. And that's the traditional pathway for a lot of those PVAs that the health systems sign. Yeah,
the PVA, it's not the same. We're not in Kansas anymore. This is a tornado of an industry of what's happened through the economies of the PBMs and what they've done and how it's shaking out a whole new business model that is going to be much more clinical driven, much more hands-on, with the pharmacist dialing into the most serious of chronic disease states. And then they're going to look to their suppliers to give them access, affordability, to be a partner in building their business. And that's not just our independent community pharmacies. That's the specialty and the health systems, small hospitals that are looking for buying advantages. One of those strategies that I'm excited to announce on this podcast is the coming of the NACDS Total Store Expo, which is August 23rd through 25th in San Diego. And this is the first time that we're publicly announcing that the Pharmacy Podcast Network will be partnered with KeySource, will be embedded in their booth. We're going to do it's going to be a party, Andy. I hope you're ready.
Oh, it's going to be a party. All right. You ready, Todd?
I'm ready. I am ready. But I'm excited. I have seen NACDS change over the years. I remember when my first NACDS, probably in 2012-ish, there were very few independent community pharmacies that attended. Now I see just a tremendous amount of independent community pharmacies going to this because of the advantages that they have with the Total Store Expo to really engage with suppliers, the creativity of those suppliers. This place is an electric. That's all. That's the number one word to describe the Total Store Expo is electric. But talk to us about our time together and what you're hoping to position for clients to meet with you and to strategize.
Yeah, I'd have to echo what you said. I think, I've been going to the NACDS conferences for, over a decade and a half, and I've seen it evolve. And it's great because, originally we would just go to the TSE, now we go to annual and we go to regional. And one of the things that I always say to everybody when they think about, they ask me, what do I think about these meetings? And I say it's the most efficient use of your time. And I love efficiency, right? I love flying to one city and having 75 meetings in 3 days. Some people think I'm crazy for that, but I'd say I'd much rather have 75 meetings in 3 days in one city than flying to 75 different, cities. What I hope to achieve, I think, is to continue to build KeySource's presence within the regional and the national pharmacy chain space, which we've had dramatic growth in. Something that I've spearheaded over the last 3 to 5 years here for the company, and I think that both the manufacturer supplier partners, the pharmacies, it's just a great conference for everyone to really discuss innovative ways to continue to navigate a challenging industry. Right, everybody faces the same challenges, some on just different scales. Right. The continued consolidation within the national chain space, I think, is going to be a continued topic. Tariffs were a significant topic at regional or at annual and regional, and I think that that story has somewhat changed a little bit. But I think if it provides one thing, it is how can we ensure that we're mitigating risk in supply chain? And the one reason that we go to these conferences, obviously, is to continue to build relationships, but to discuss how KeySource is a very viable source in you mitigating risk. And we want to make sure that people understand that we're able to provide services that bring continuity to care for their patients, and as well, a mutually beneficial relationship where the pharmacy gets the goods at a value and consistently, and KeySource has the ability to earn their business. So a very exciting show. And, I think that outside of even the pharmacy vendors, there's, a lot of front end store vendors there that help bring diversification to pharmacies on the front end of the OTC side, which is exciting too.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to work with KeySource. We will be once again embedded in their booth. So if you want to be part of the press coverage of the NACDS TSE Total Store Expo 2025, please reach out to us, reach out to Andy, reach out to me. Andy is a huge active user on LinkedIn. So reach out to Andy Crawford, very easy name to look up and connect with. And then set some time with Andy and I. And if you have something that is a major issue, share those insights on our programming to share it with our 3,000, 6,000, sometimes 9,000 listeners that plug into those post shows. And Andy, this has been thrilling for me to work with KeySource and to build this content for our pharmacy operators out there. And I just want to thank you and the team.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Todd. And look forward to seeing everybody at TSE as well.
Absolutely. Be on the lookout for episode 2 of this 3-part series sponsored by KeySource. Subscribe on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere that you want to access your podcast information. And we thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.